The jungle air on Outpost 9 was thick with heat and arrogance. Alien soldiers lounged beneath metallic awnings, their hybrid armor clanking lazily as they mocked old war stories. Most of them hadn't even fought in the human campaign. That war was over years ago. Humans were defeated, scattered, pathetic, and yet, their names still crept into jokes like a bad habit. "Did you hear about the one who used sticks and mud to kill a Reaper-class drone?" chuckled a blue-scaled reptilian, tossing a ration bar to a fellow trooper. "Oh yes," said the other, snorting. "And the one who took down a bomber with a rock. You'd think they were gods the way the old brass talk." Their laughter echoed against the oxidized walls of the barracks. Further inside, down a corridor flickering with unreliable power, sat a single reinforced cell, silent, shadowed, and humid. In it, motionless as stone, was the last known Terran operative on the planet. Sergeant Nolan Vale didn't move. Not when the guards passed by mocking him. Not when lights dimmed. Not even when they slammed the butt of a plasma rifle against the bars to get a rise. He just sat there, gray-eyed, unblinking, breathing slow and even. Like he was waiting for the wind to shift. 3 weeks earlier, his entire unit had been wiped in an ambush. Coalition Command had paraded his capture like a trophy. The video of his blooded, bound figure being dragged through a rainstorm had been broadcast across 12 systems. A warning. An ending. But endings don't breathe like Vale did. Outside, the Coalition training resumed with the usual bluster. The jungle was a proving ground for recruits, brutal terrain, unpredictable weather, and the ghosts of what once was human resistance. 1,000 kilometers of mud, trees, and silence. Command didn't believe there was anything left to fear. Just one prisoner, they said. One broken relic in a cell. Still, someone posted a warning on the mess hall wall, "Beware the Earthborn." They buried their dead standing up. It had become a joke. They drew stick figures beside it, gave the human sniper a cape and glowing eyes. Ghost stories, they laughed. Let the jungle have him. The mockery deepened when Vale finally escaped. No alarms. No forced breakout. Just a blank camera feed, 2 unconscious guards, and an empty cell. His shackles had been melted from the inside out, quietly, surgically. No signs of struggle. The security logs were corrupted. The guards swore they never even saw him move. One of them quit on the spot, babbling about eyes in the dark. Command blamed sabotage. A tech glitch. They locked down the base, doubled patrols. But even that didn't stop the first death. It happened during a night drill. A Cerny scout, 6 arms, infrared vision, dropped mid-sentence with a hole the size of a coin between his brows. Clean entry. No exit wound. His teammates found no trace of a shooter. No flash, no thermal signature, no sound. The jungle swallowed the noise. They dismissed it. Training accident, someone said. Maybe a weapons discharge. They buried the body without ceremony. When a second soldier died, this time a field technician, head turned to pulp while working alone on a comms relay, they started whispering again. Some whispers said it was a beast. Others, a rogue drone. But a few, quieter and closer to terrified, began murmuring about Vale. The sniper. The one who hadn't spoken. The one who never blinked. They launched a sweep through the jungle. 40 soldiers with drones, heat-seeking pulses, aerial scans. They combed the valley ridge by ridge. Found nothing. Just trees. And on one of those trees, carved into the bark in exact Terran script, were 4 words. Don't forget who bled. The tension in the camp tightened like wire. Jokes turned brittle. Laughter faded. Soldiers began sleeping with helmets on. One squad requested redeployment, citing persistent psychological interference. Command laughed them off. You're scared of a myth, the officer said. A monkey with a rifle. 2 days later, he died in the latrine with a shot clean through his mouth. Now they knew it wasn't random. That night, no one slept. Vale, miles away, watched through a scope that could read the breath patterns of a lizard at 700 meters. His rifle, an old Earth-made weapon reinforced with coalition parts, rested silently against his shoulder. He didn't smile. He didn't rage. He just breathed. He had 32 confirmed kills during the war. He wasn't here for war anymore. This wasn't vengeance. It was memory. They had laughed at him in that cell. Said humans were extinct. Said Earth was dust and rust. Said snipers were obsolete. But Nolan Vale didn't need a city. He didn't need a platoon. All he needed was a line of sight and a steady hand. As the outpost lights flickered in the approaching storm, Vale whispered to himself, voice barely audible above the wind. Time to remind them. The jungle had changed. It no longer hummed with the mechanical buzz of drills or the lazy chatter of overconfident soldiers. Now it breathed differently, quieter, tenser. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Another body was found. Lieutenant Marek, a seasoned Tharn warrior with bone-plated skin and 12 confirmed kills, lay sprawled near the western ridge, his face partially dissolved by a precise round that entered through the eye socket. His squad found him just after dawn, helmet intact, sensors still recording. The playback revealed nothing. No movement. No sound. Just birdsong, then silence, then death. This time, command couldn't hide it. A briefing was called. The entire garrison, over 70 troops from 8 species, stood in a semicircle as Commander Yoltak addressed them. The Yalari's voice, once booming and sure, now cracked with forced confidence. This is not a war. It's a containment issue. One rogue human, likely delusional, is playing games in the trees. He's outnumbered. Outgunned. He will be found. You will kill him. No one responded. They just watched the grainy footage loop behind Yoltak. Frame after frame of nothing, until a single second, a flicker of static, and Marek collapsed. Some claimed they saw movement. Others, a face. None could agree. The jungle, they whispered, was no longer theirs. Vale moved between branches like shadow through memory. He knew every inch of the terrain. He had scouted it during the early days of the war when satellites were blind and the trees held secrets. The coalition had paved roads, cut trees, poured concrete. But the jungle healed. It remembered him. It welcomed him back. He took his time. He never killed out of anger, only intention. His targets were chosen: comms techs, supply officers, sentries positioned at high vantage points. Each death disrupted function, not just morale. He was dismantling the machine, piece by careful piece. They sent drones next. Hundreds of them, metal wings humming across the canopy. Vale remained still for 18 hours beneath a rotting tree stump, his body coated in thermal dampening paste mixed with insect husk. He counted every drone. None saw him. One he disabled by throwing a rock at the right moment, triggering its own avoidance protocol to crash into a tree. Every death now carried a message. He left behind scavenged helmets with messages burned into their sides. You laughed first. You brought this. Keep watching. One morning, a scout found a pile of gear arranged like a shrine. At the center, a coalition officer's badge. Next to it, a slug round embedded in a cracked visor. Written in the soldier's own blood across the ground was the phrase, "Scope-fed justice." That was when fear gave way to panic. Commander Yoltak locked himself in the command tower. He blamed sabotage. He accused his own troops. An inquiry was launched. Cerny accused the Yalari. The Yalari accused the Vryn. Fistfights broke out. Firearms were drawn. 3 soldiers died before the chaos settled. The sniper hadn't even fired that day, but it was still his victory. Private Jex Alvora, youngest in the unit and one of the few who didn't mock the humans, began keeping a personal log. Day 9. We're afraid of a man we've never seen. He hunts like a phantom. Leaves no heat, no trace. Command says he's just one man. But one man shouldn't feel this much like a storm. The coalition initiated a total lockdown. Patrols doubled. Shifts shortened. Sleep cycles broken. Morale was in ruins. One platoon refused to leave their barracks entirely. Another set fire to a portion of the jungle, hoping to flush the sniper out. All they found were birds. And ash. That night, Vale struck again. 2 kills. One from a mile out. The other, a throat shot, while a soldier was relieving himself behind a boulder. The message this time was simple. A piece of torn uniform tied to a tree, with the words, "Command sleeps while you die." Inside the bunker, Yoltak watched his officers crumble. He issued orders no one followed. He demanded loyalty from soldiers who had stopped saluting. They had begun checking every shadow, flinching at every gust of wind. Sleep became a luxury no one could afford. Jex, tired of waiting for death, decided to face it. He volunteered for Jungle Recon. Alone. Everyone thought he was suicidal. He claimed he wanted to negotiate. "If this is a war," he said, "maybe we should try talking." They gave him a flare gun and a half-charged rifle. He walked into the jungle at dusk. Hours passed. Then gunfire. One flare went up. The color, red. Distress. They found Jex alive the next morning. Shaken. Silent. His weapon untouched. In the briefing room, he finally spoke. "I saw him," he whispered. "No armor. Just eyes. Not rage. Not even hate. Just focus. I asked him why." Yoltak leaned in. "And what did the human say?" Jex swallowed. He said, "Because you forgot we remember." The room fell still. That night, the command tower lights went out. A single shot rang through the base, cutting through reinforced glass like paper. Commander Yoltak slumped forward over the control panel, blood blooming beneath his collar. The bullet was retrieved. Human alloy. No ballistic match in Coalition databases. Engraved near its tip were 5 tiny letters etched by hand. Vale. The base fell into silent chaos. The sniper hadn't killed a grunt this time. He had struck the head. With one shot, he'd severed leadership, confidence, and any illusion of safety. There were no jokes the next morning. No laughter. Just eyes watching the tree line, waiting. Rain hammered the jungle with relentless rhythm. It turned the dirt to black slurry and muted even the occasional mutters from the few remaining coalition troops still clinging to routine. Power flickered. Sensors glitched. Half the surveillance grid had failed after the command tower went dark. No one dared admit it aloud, but the base was dying, slowly, deliberately, and with purpose. They stopped sending patrols. No one wanted to be next. Lieutenant Krez, now acting commander by default, stood hunched over the last working terminal. His fur was soaked, claws trembling. He replayed the footage of Yoltak's death again. He watched the bullet hit. Watched the glass spiderweb. Watched the blood spill. Every time, he looked for a shadow, a glint, some trace, anything. There was nothing. You can't shoot that cleanly through reinforced carbon glass unless you've mapped the angle down to a decimal, he muttered, more to himself than the technician behind him. The technician didn't respond. He had died 6 hours earlier with his throat slit in his bunk. They hadn't even heard the door open. Across the base, silence ruled. Doors were barricaded. Some soldiers had stopped reporting in entirely. The scent of ammonia and rot crept through the halls. Discipline had collapsed. No orders carried weight anymore. The sniper had done what war machines could not. He had broken the idea of unity. Jex Alvora sat alone in the mess hall, staring at the red flare casing he'd retrieved from the jungle. He turned it over and over in his hands, still unsure whether Vale had spared him out of pity or calculation. Or worse, both. The memory of those gray, unblinking eyes wouldn't leave. There had been no emotion in them, no glee, no cruelty. Just resolve. A broadcast began. Without warning, every screen in the compound blinked on. No signal source. No ping. Just the image of a coalition helmet spinning slowly in the mud, bullet hole clean through its forehead. The camera panned upward. There, through the rain and fog, stood a lone figure cloaked in shadow. Face obscured. But every soldier watching felt it. The ghost had a name. Vale's voice followed, calm, even, stripped of emotion. You invaded a dying world and danced on its grave. You laughed at the ashes. You turned discipline into mockery and your strength into blindness. The screen cut to a rapid montage, helmet cam footage of each kill, spliced together with brutal precision. Not for gore. For message. The camera lingered on the stillness of his victims. The cleanliness. The control. It wasn't murder. It was art. Terrible, disciplined art. Then the final shot, Commander Yeltak's face, frozen mid-command, before the bullet erased him. Vale's voice returned, softer now. You forgot the cost. You forgot that ghosts are born from graves. That we don't vanish, we wait. The transmission ended. The screens went black. In the control room, Krez stepped back from the terminal and sat, heavily. He whispered, "This isn't a soldier, it's a message-wearing skin." For a long time, no one spoke. That night, a storm overtook the ridge. Lightning split the sky. Wind howled through the shattered windows. And Vale moved through the base like a specter with bone-deep memory. He left no bodies this time. Only marks. Messages scratched into walls. Burned into console screens. One door had 3 words carved in it, "I never missed." Another had tally marks, 57, slashed in neat rows. When dawn broke, Vale was gone. Reinforcements arrived a week later, led by a battle-hardened general who refused to believe the rumors. But they found the base empty. Rations untouched. Weapons still powered. And not a single trace of the man who had haunted it. Just one final symbol burned into the barracks floor, a sniper's reticle, centered on nothing, aimed at no one, waiting. Across the coalition, whispers became doctrine. Sniper schools restructured their curriculum to include the Outpost 9 engagement. Tacticians called it asymmetric warfare. Soldiers called it something else. The ghost of Earth. They never found Vale. But his message lived. And long after, in the deepest parts of the jungle, some claimed they heard gunshots at night. Always just one. Always followed by silence. Weeks passed, and the jungle reclaimed what was left behind. Vines crept over the shattered barracks, birds nested in the empty watchtowers, and the metallic scent of fear faded slowly into the damp soil. The coalition sealed the incident under classified protocol and ordered silence from every surviving member of Outpost 9's personnel. Officially, the sniper was never identified. Unofficially, they all knew his name. Nolan Vale had become more than a man. He was a myth now, an embodiment of what they had failed to destroy. The last ghost of Earth. And the fear he carved into them endured, spreading far beyond the shattered outpost. Lieutenant Jex Ulvora was reassigned to a diplomatic vessel and given mandatory psychological treatment. He spoke little, but what he did say traveled quickly. In private rooms on distant stations, hushed voices repeated his words. He didn't kill for vengeance. He killed because they forgot we were human. On a distant moon, a classroom full of elite snipers reviewed declassified fragments from Outpost 9. One instructor, an aging veteran with human blood in his veins, paused the footage of Commander Yeltak's assassination. "Note the timing," he said, tapping the screen. The wind was shifting. Rain at 30 meters per second. He waited 4 full seconds for the glass to curve with the pressure before pulling the trigger. That's not instinct. That's mathematics. That's memory. That's discipline. He let the footage play again, slower this time, and added, almost reverently, "You don't fight men like that. You survive them, if they let you." Rumors reached human colonies too. Hidden pockets of Terran survivors, scattered since Earth's fall, began to murmur about the sniper who hunted empires. Messages scratched into cave walls, broadcast in encrypted pulses, passed through trader networks like sparks on dry kindling. Vale lives. The fight's not over. We remember. On a ruined asteroid base orbiting the remains of Saturn, an old man with a shattered spine and faded combat tattoos watched the stars. He wore no insignia now. Just scars. His rifle lay beside him, polished and silent. He didn't need to carry it anymore. The message had been sent. He read the latest coalition dispatch with quiet amusement. It was a behavioral threat analysis, an internal study on how to recognize early indicators of Terran sniper syndrome. The paper described traits like silence under stress, hyperfocus, minimal emotional response, and a tendency to act alone but with strategic awareness that implies deep training and obsessive memory retention. Vale folded the paper and set it beside a fire that was never lit. He knew what they feared wasn't just him. It was the idea of him. The possibility that one man, alone, precise, and unbreakable, could fracture a machine designed to consume worlds. He hadn't needed an army. He hadn't even needed revenge. He'd needed only time, and patience, and a reason, and they'd given him one when they laughed. Outpost 9 was never rebuilt. The Coalition left it to rot, officially citing unstable terrain. But every few years, a patrol ship would drift too close, or a curious scout would wander near the edge of that jungle. Sometimes, they'd pick up something on long-range sensors, a single sharp sound, unmistakable to anyone trained to hear it. Not an animal. Not a malfunction. A gunshot. Just one. And after that, nothing. Jex heard it once, years later, while stationed near the perimeter of that now forbidden zone. He stood perfectly still, visor down, heart steady. The sound echoed across the trees, like memory punching through time. He didn't report it. He just stood there, eyes scanning the horizon, knowing the jungle was watching. Some said Vale died in those woods. Others believed he lived on, moving from one forgotten planet to another, reminding giants that they were never too large to fall. But the truth didn't matter anymore. The myth was stronger than the man. And in every dark corner of the galaxy where boots stomped too loud, where orders were barked without thought, and where laughter echoed at the expense of the fallen, there lingered a shadow. A breath. A trigger half-squeezed in memory. One man. One rifle. And the silence that followed.